We spend most of our lives trying to outrun discomfort. Like swimmers caught in a current, we thrash and struggle against the pull, thinking if we just push a little harder, swim a little faster, or resist a little more, we'll finally get to solid ground. But what if the very act of resisting is what's pulling us under? What if the more we fight against life, the more it fights back? In the Western world, we've been conditioned to believe that resistance is strength, that pushing through, standing firm, never yielding, and always staying in control are the hallmarks of success. But Taoism offers a different lens. It invites us to consider that true strength may lie not in resistance, but in surrender, not in fighting the current, but in learning how to float. The Taoist art of non-resistance is not about giving up, being passive, or letting life walk all over us. It's about aligning ourselves with the deeper rhythms of existence, understanding that the universe has its own flow, and the more we try to force it, the more suffering we invite. The ancient sages weren't just philosophers, they were observers, deeply attuned to the way trees bend in the wind without breaking, how rivers carve mountains not by force, but by persistence, softness, and time. And they noticed something simple but profound. The more you resist, the worse it gets. This teaching isn't easy to accept in a culture built on goals, grit, and grind. From a young age, we're taught to push, to plan, to perfect every detail of our lives. Got a problem? Fix it. Got pain? Mask it. Got uncertainty? Control it. We resist aging with creams, surgery, and denial. We resist death with medicine, fear, and clinging. We resist discomfort with distractions, addictions, and endless scrolling. We resist other people's opinions, especially when they challenge our own. But in all that resistance, what are we actually doing? We're tightening ourselves up. We're becoming rigid. We're hardening against life itself. And as Lao Tzu pointed out so beautifully, anything that becomes too hard becomes breakable. The soft outlasts the hard. Water overcomes stone. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Non-resistance, in this sense, is an invitation to relax. Not in the lazy sense, but in the deeply intelligent way that a tree relaxes into the seasons, knowing when to bloom, when to let go, and when to rest. It's about allowing life to breathe through us, instead of choking on our own need for control. Because the more we grip, the more we suffer. And the more we let go, the more life begins to open up. But what does this look like in real life? It's easy to admire the poetry of the Tao Te Ching, but in the middle of a crisis, those words can feel distant. When you're facing a breakup, a job loss, a health scare, or the simple grind of a stressful day, non-resistance doesn't sound like a strategy. It sounds like giving up. But it's not. In fact, non-resistance might be the most powerful thing you can do in the moment, because it means not adding extra tension to what's already hard. It means not making the pain worse by trying to pretend it shouldn't be there. Pain is part of life. So is loss. So is uncertainty. But suffering, that's often optional. Suffering is what happens when we say, "This shouldn't be happening," when in fact, it already is. Suffering is the mental argument with reality. Non-resistance says, "Okay, this is what's here. I don't have to like it, but I'm not going to fight it." That tiny shift changes everything. Suddenly, instead of wasting all your energy on trying to control the uncontrollable, you open up to clarity, to wisdom, to possibility. And ironically, that's when real transformation can happen. Not because you forced it, but because you got out of the way. Think about water again. When a river meets a rock, it doesn't argue with it. It doesn't stop and say, "Why are you here? Get out of my way." It just flows around it. Maybe slowly, maybe with a little turbulence. But eventually it finds a path. That's the essence of Wu Wei, effortless action, the core Taoist principle that teaches us how to move without force. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right thing at the right time, in the right way, without friction. It's like dancing with the universe instead of wrestling it. And the beauty is, when you stop resisting, you can hear the rhythm more clearly. You become more in tune with the moment, more sensitive to your surroundings, and surprisingly, more effective. Not because you're pushing harder, but because you're flowing better. Life starts to move with you instead of against you. That doesn't mean it's always smooth. There will still be challenges, but you won't be fighting two battles anymore, one with the world and one with yourself. So the next time life feels heavy, ask yourself, what am I resisting right now? Is it a feeling I don't want to feel? A truth I don't want to face? A person I wish were different? A past I wish I could change? Just noticing that resistance is the first step, because awareness breaks the spell. And once you see it, you can soften, you can pause, you can breathe. Non-resistance isn't just a spiritual concept. It's a moment-by-moment practice. And like any practice, it takes time. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. And the more you practice letting go of control, of fear, of the illusion that you're supposed to have it all figured out, the more life starts to flow again. Not always how you expected, but often in ways far richer, deeper, and more meaningful than you ever imagined. Because in the end, the Tao isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. And when you stop resisting, you begin to allow what was always trying to guide you. There's a quiet kind of suffering that creeps into our lives unnoticed, a background hum of frustration, anxiety, or fatigue that builds up not because life is unusually cruel, but because we're constantly fighting things that can't be fought. We resist small discomforts, a late train, a rude coworker, a long line at the grocery store. We resist big ones too: heartbreak, aging, rejection, grief. Our minds spin stories like, "This isn't fair," or "This shouldn't be happening to me," and we grip those thoughts like shields. But instead of protecting us, they weigh us down. Taoist wisdom invites us to question the usefulness of this resistance. Is it actually helping? Or are we just exhausting ourselves trying to hold back the tide with our bare hands? The practice of non-resistance doesn't mean we have to enjoy suffering or pretend we're okay when we're not. It simply means we stop feeding the fire. We stop adding layers of mental and emotional resistance to what already hurts. The Tao says, if you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. That might sound radical, even scary, but in truth, it's the beginning of peace. When we stop needing the world to be different than it is, we create space. Space for healing, for clarity, for the next right step to reveal itself without force. Consider the body for a moment. When we get injured, our first reaction is usually tension. We stiffen, we brace, we flinch. But every healer will tell you that tension slows recovery. It restricts blood flow, tightens muscles, and can turn a small injury into chronic pain. Emotional pain works the same way. Resistance creates tension. We try to push a feeling away, and instead, it lodges deeper. Anger, grief, sadness, they all want to move through us like weather. But when we resist them, they stagnate. They turn into bitterness, numbness, or anxiety. A Taoist sage might say, emotions are like rivers. They only cause flooding when they're blocked. So non-resistance becomes a form of emotional intelligence. It teaches us to feel fully without drowning, to welcome what's here without judging it, and most importantly, to allow our experience to be real instead of fighting it with ideas of how it should be. This is hard for most of us, especially when we've been taught that strength means suppressing emotion or powering through. But in the Taoist view, strength is softness. The willow that bends survives the storm, while the oak that resists is the one that breaks. We see this echoed in the wisdom of martial arts like Tai Chi, where yielding to an opponent's force is often the most effective move. Not because it avoids conflict, but because it harmonizes with it, redirects it, and transforms it. This principle doesn't just apply to our inner life, it plays out in our relationships too. Think of the last argument you had with someone you care about. Chances are, both of you were trying to be heard, understood, or validated. But in the heat of the moment, it probably felt like a battle. You pushed, they pushed back, and somewhere along the way, connection was lost. In Taoism, there's a deep recognition that resistance in relationships, whether it's trying to change someone, control them, or win an argument, almost always leads to suffering. But when we shift to non-resistance, something changes. We stop trying to fix the other person. We listen. We let their perspective exist, even if we disagree. And ironically, this openness often creates the exact space where healing and understanding can occur. It's not about being passive or letting ourselves be mistreated. Taoism never asks us to be doormats. It asks us to act from alignment, not reactivity, to respond from a place of clarity, not resistance. And that difference, though subtle, is everything. Because when we stop fighting people, we start connecting with them. And connection, more than control, is what softens hearts and opens minds. Non-resistance also changes the way we work with our goals. Western culture prizes hustle, grind, and ambition. And while there's nothing wrong with dreaming big or working hard, resistance often sneaks into our drive for success. We become so obsessed with outcomes that we miss the present moment. We try to force creativity, force productivity, force results. But real breakthroughs, the moments of genius, clarity, or inspiration, rarely come through pressure. They come when we're relaxed, open, receptive. Taoism teaches that the path unfolds best when we walk it with ease. That doesn't mean we don't take action. It means we take aligned action. We move when it's time to move. We rest when it's time to rest. Like a farmer who doesn't tug at his crops to make them grow, we learn to trust the timing of things. This requires deep patience and humility, qualities often undervalued in modern life. But they're essential to the Taoist way, because when we stop resisting where we are, we begin to receive the wisdom of the moment. And sometimes, that wisdom tells us to pause, to wait, to breathe. Other times it says, go, and we'll know it because the energy flows naturally. Non-resistance isn't laziness, it's attunement. And when we're attuned, life becomes less of a struggle and more of a dance. This dance with life continues when we face situations beyond our control, global crises, political division, economic uncertainty, or environmental changes. These challenges are real. They deserve awareness and engagement. But resistance alone isn't a solution. It often fuels outrage, fear, or hopelessness. Non-resistance, in contrast, asks, how can I meet this moment with wisdom instead of panic? How can I act skillfully instead of react blindly? It doesn't mean apathy. It means choosing a response that flows from grounded presence, not frantic resistance. In Taoist terms, it's about moving from the center of the storm rather than being tossed around by it. That center, that calm eye of the hurricane, lives within us. We access it not by controlling the storm, but by stopping our inner fight against it. And from there, we can move more effectively. We can show up for what matters. We can take action, yes, but without losing ourselves in the chaos. This is the subtle power of non-resistance. It returns us to ourselves, to the place where clarity lives, where peace isn't something we chase, but something we remember, because it was never lost. It was only buried under layers of fear, force, and the need to control. There comes a time when we all meet the edge of what we can control, the diagnosis that turns our world upside down, the phone call in the middle of the night, the betrayal we never saw coming, or simply the slow, aching realization that something we hoped for is not going to happen. These moments don't announce themselves. They arrive without warning. And when they do, our instinct is almost always resistance. This can't be happening, we think. Not to me. Not like this. But Taoist philosophy reminds us that life doesn't unfold according to our preferences. It moves according to its own mysterious rhythm, and in these moments, we are invited to make a choice: keep resisting the pain or allow it, not to wallow in it, not to become it, but to acknowledge that it's real, that it belongs. This is the heart of non-resistance: to let life in even when it hurts, to trust that the very thing we think will break us might actually be the thing that frees us. And it's only when we stop bracing against reality that we can begin to move through it. Non-resistance isn't weakness, it's courage. The courage to let go of the illusion of control and to meet life exactly as it is, without the armor, without the war, and something miraculous happens in that surrender. We begin to discover that pain, when not resisted, softens, that fear, when not fed, quiets, that the weight we were carrying wasn't just the situation itself, it was the inner battle against it. When we stop resisting, we create space, and in that space, something new can emerge. A clarity we couldn't see before, a strength we didn't know we had, a wisdom that only arises in silence. Often, it's only when we've exhausted all our efforts to fight reality that we realize we never had to fight in the first place. We just had to allow, to listen, to feel, and to trust that there is a deeper intelligence guiding life, one that doesn't need our interference, but does welcome our cooperation. Taoism calls this the Tao, the way. It's not a path we create, it's a path we uncover by aligning ourselves with the truth of the moment. And in that alignment, life begins to work through us, not against us. This is the paradox of non-resistance. The more we let go, the more power we gain. Not the power to control the world, but the power to move in harmony with it. And that harmony, that quiet, steady grace, is what brings peace. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you sit back and let injustice run rampant or abandon your dreams. It means you stop wasting energy on what you can't change and focus, instead on what you can influence with clarity and compassion. Non-resistance allows you to move with intelligence, not impulse. To act with presence, not panic. And when life does demand action, because sometimes it does, you act from a deeper place. Not from fear, not from anger, but from connection to something real, something whole. It's the difference between a tree pushed by the wind and a tree that bends with it. One breaks, the other survives. We live in a time where everyone is trying to push back against something, and while that push is sometimes necessary, it often becomes a habit, a way of being that's always tense, always reactive, always afraid. Non-resistance breaks that cycle. It reminds us that we're not here to fight every moment of our lives. We're here to live them, to be present for them, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones, because those are the moments that shape us, refine us, and, if we allow them, wake us up. Maybe the greatest freedom we can ever find isn't in changing the world, but in changing how we relate to it. Instead of living at war with life, we start living in rhythm with it. That rhythm won't always be easy. There will still be loss, still be challenge, but there will also be peace, not because everything is perfect, but because we're no longer resisting imperfection. That's the gift of the Tao. It doesn't promise comfort, it promises flow. And in that flow, we find our place, not as masters of life, but as participants in something far greater. So when the next wave comes, when the next storm hits, or when you find yourself facing something you cannot fix, try something different. Don't resist, don't panic, just breathe, be still, watch, and trust. Life knows what it's doing. And the more you resist, the worse it gets. But the moment you let go, even just a little, you'll find the current carrying you, not dragging you. You'll find peace, not by changing the world, but by changing the way you meet it, one breath at a time.